I'm going to go ahead and start. He'll get here. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the Board of Education meeting for Douglas County School District for February 5th at 6:01 because Director Lemieux or Director Lung is passing out treats. Otherwise, we would have started right out at 6. We're going to begin with roll call. Director Chancho Shore.
Here.
Graziano.
Here.
Holtzman.
Here.
Lemieux.
Here.
Lung.
Here.
Thank you. Ray here and Vogel.
Here.
Let's join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I also want to recognize on the dais our student voice for tonight, Allison Marsh, who's from Mountain Vista High School, also serves on the student advisory group, and so we're delighted. This is your first time. You picked a great meeting to be at, so way to go. So let's all just a round of applause for Allison Marsh. Next on our agenda is student and staff recognitions. Dr. Tucker and Director Graziano will be assisting tonight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, President Ray, our wonderful directors, and our full house. Give yourselves a round of applause. How's everyone doing? Fine. All right, I don't have to ask for a second one. Thank you. We have a full house tonight. We're going to recognize some outstanding students and outstanding staff tonight. First recognition, I want to say thank you to the students and the art teachers of the Douglas County School District. First, DCS Montessori and Franktown Elementary. When you came up here and you saw that amazing artwork, that artwork came from students from DC Montessori and Franktown Elementary. So let's give those students and staff a round of applause. As I said, it's always great to recognize and celebrate our students and our staff for their accomplishments. On the screen earlier, you saw some pictures from this past weekend, middle school honors ensemble that was held. Let's give those students and staff a round of applause as well. Now, before we officially get started, I want to share a very moving video with you, no pun intended, a moving video with you that sort of fits nicely into our recognitions.
Welcome to the Colorado Music Educators Association Conference. The performers here are the best in the state. The journey to get here? It's one that only a family could pull off.
1, 2, ready, go.
This is the Rock Canyon Women's Select Choir, led by their choir mom, Julia Day. Families, of course, bring out the best and worst in each other.
Yeah, I don't think we were together at all. We're still missing it.
Down the hall,
2, 3, go.
It's much the same.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Stop.
The orchestra's father is Ben Day.
I know, it's torture to stop you in the middle of that.
Julia's real-life husband.
We try to keep work at work so that we can focus on the family at home.
Easier said than done as they prepare for this show.
We consider it a pinnacle honor of our career.
It's a balancing act of letting their school kids grasp the importance of this performance while remaining gracious.
Great playing, everybody. I think you're warming up.
We need them to know how important it is and how much pressure there is on them without overwhelming them.
They've been working on these songs since August, and like any parent, they believe in their kids.
Nice. You've put in all the work. You have.
Now these families are ready for a road trip.
And now we get to bask in it a little bit at the Broadmoor. Which doesn't stink.
Rock Canyon and the Dales were not the only families representing Douglas County schools.
A perfect blend of musicianship and moxie.
I have a female jazz group here this year named Red Hot.
Rochelle Walter has performed here 6 times, twice with Castleview and often alongside her husband Heath, who is also a choir director at the school.
The pride of Castleview High School, Red Heart.
It's so much more than the music and the rhythms and the notes. It's just about the connection.
It is more than music.
They say all the time it's a family. It's just lifelong relationships that they're building.
What's great about having students is that the students continually remind you how important music is to balance your life.
The musical style is secondary.
Through music, we can talk about so many important issues, whether it's mental health pieces, whether it's our relationships with others, whether it's just remembering that we have emotions.
The performances may be forgotten. This family they've built is something they'll always remember. Is something they'll always remember.
So tonight we recognize some of our district's amazing educators who are instilling a love of music and art in our students. So let's start with the music educators featured in that amazing video. Please join me in recognizing Rochelle Walter from Castleview High School. Rochelle, please join us up front. She's amazing, and her amazing principal, Rex Core. Dr. Core, please come up front. Right by me, there you go. And Ben and Julia Dale from Rock Canyon High School, please join me up front. And the children. And their amazing principal, Andy Abner, please join us as well. Now, Ms. Walter, I understand. I'm looking at my notes here. Now, I understand that this was the sixth time. Okay, I'm off my notes. I'm close, okay. The sixth time that one of your student musical groups was invited to perform at the Broadmoor, is that correct? Now, tell us what that means.
You know what?
Sure.
7, actually.
See there, okay, see there, 7. That's where I got 7.
Times.
So what does this mean to you as an educator, in particular a music educator?
Hopefully we're doing something right. We love what we're doing with the students. It's about the students just achieving, trying to achieve the best and being accepted at the state level. And so I think it's about them and the connections that we make with them. So, yeah. I thought you were
and Dr. Core, we know you have a long passion and love for the arts, being a former theater director. So as an administrator, as a principal, what does this mean to you?
I think it is a tremendous source of pride for Castleview High School. Our performers, these musicians, are just gifted, and their hard work and dedication, the hours that they put in, so that they're hitting every note just right. It is a labor of love for these kids and for their passionate director. We're so proud of them. At Castleview, we celebrate our musicians and artists with the same fervor we would any state championship team. These performers, CMEA is the very top, the pinnacle of the state of Colorado, and we recognize that. We're very proud of them.
Do you think you can get me in the choir, maybe? Okay. Okay. Ben and Julia Dale, congratulations on your performance at the Colorado Music Educators Conference. Being selected, what does that mean? Especially, the whole family and the children and so forth?
It meant lots of time away from these beautiful children. No, I think something we're really proud of is how well our students work together, and how hard and passionate, how hard they're willing to work and how passionate they are to communicate to others. And so they want to put in the extra effort to make sure that they can really meet the heart and soul of all of the audience members.
And, you can tell the students day after day how great they are and how amazing they sound. But with CMEA, it's an independent panel of adjudicators who listen to your recordings and decide that, yes, this truly is the best of the best that Colorado has to offer, and we're going to feature these specific groups. And so it's a chance to really validate all of the students' hard work, and instead of just, like the video said, the mom and dad of the group saying how great they are, it's other people telling them how great they are, and that recognition is kind of a once in a lifetime for some of us, I guess, or 7 times in a lifetime, or but also just a very memorable experience for them. But we couldn't have done it at Rock Canyon, especially without the support of Mr. Abner to my right here. He's continuously, endlessly generous and supportive of what we do. Comes to every single one of our concerts. We couldn't ask for a better administrator and support from him. So thank you, Mr. Abner.
And Mr. Abner, I know you represent the theme in this community by our board, and that is celebrating the whole child, ensuring students perform to their highest academically, but also musically, and celebrating the artistic side of our children. What does this honor, what does it mean to you from your perspective as a principal?
Sure. For me, I guess our groups performing at CMEA is so much more about music, and maybe that's because I don't have the music background, but I have 2 amazing educators who stand here with me today, and I've watched them educate students way beyond the music. And Ben has started a kindness campaign. He talks to our freshmen every year. He talks about how to treat and how to be a good human being. Julia, if you've seen some of the pieces about her putting Polly's piece together, she leads and she teaches from her heart. And so these are just 2 amazing humans with 2 beautiful children, beautiful family here tonight. And so to see them be able to go to CMEA, for me, it's rewarding to see 2 staff members who work so hard and put everything into their work to be recognized with their work at such a prestigious event. So congratulations to you guys, and you need to know how much I appreciate everything you do at Rock Canyon for all of our students, and someday maybe a little Abner will be with you, and God help you if that's the case. So, all right, thank you, Dr. Tucker.
Okay, very good. We're going to do a quick photo op. Director Graziano, any comments from you, and then we'll move on to our next recognition. Okay, let's, certificates and a quick photo op. Okay, Chris Shalene, where's our great Chris Shalene? He's around here somewhere. Okay, a big thank you to Chris Shalene for putting together the video. Yes.
More. 3, 2, 1. Interesting stance.
Next, we will recognize 3 individuals who were responsible for coordinating the amazing middle school honor ensemble event that took place in our district this past weekend. First, Adam Van Alphen from Mesa Middle School. Please join us. Taylor Hutchins from Crest Hill Middle School. And Jeremy Estelle of Mountain Ridge Middle School. And we want their amazing principals to join us. So please join me up front with Tony Jakowski, Sid Rundle, and Mark Harmon. Please come up front, please. So, gentlemen, Adam, tell us how the great musical ensemble program got its start.
Sure. Almost probably 5 years ago. Taylor and I were talking, came up with an idea. Jeremy and I were talking, and just kind of thought that there was something that we were lacking here in the district when we looked at other school districts around with ensembles and things that they were providing and opportunities for students, especially the middle school grade level. And we took a leap to try this and see what could happen. I think I remember the first year was probably the most nerve-wracking year because we had absolutely no idea whether kids would even audition or not, even when we tried to encourage as many kids as possible. But, you know, Dr. Tucker can attest to as well at the performance that we had this past Saturday. Tremendous participation by some tremendous young musicians in our school district.
You're right. It was a packed house, standing room only, and I would not admit that we had a few more people than we should have had, but it was a packed house. So, gentlemen, leaders, tell us about what this means for our teachers and our teachers' involvement.
I think anytime we can showcase our buildings, our teachers, and most importantly our students, it's a win-win situation. And when I reflect back on that first year, it was well attended, but this past year was simply amazing. We had Dr. Tucker there, we had board members there. It was a packed house. And the fortitude that Adam's had, because anytime you start a new initiative, it can be rocky at first. Who's going to show up? It's going to be Adam and one student playing a violin for two people in the audience, and those are his parents. But the fortitude he has had to just push through, and the work behind this that is mostly unpaid has been phenomenal. And I think this past weekend when you saw a full house, the level at which these students were able to play, the conductors that we're now bringing on and the level they're at, I mean, it's phenomenal. So I was just so impressed, and I'm proud to have this person as a member of Mason Middle School. So
I just want to add to that, and really maybe more in full disclosure in case there's any Title IX concerns, females were allowed to participate in this concert in this evening. It just so happens to be a bunch of ugly men standing up here tonight. But no, sorry, Dr. Tucker, you excluded. What I want to add to this is really is for middle school kids to be a part of something larger than themselves, an ensemble, to know that their contribution for this moment in time is not just about them, is so precious. It's so necessary, so absolutely critical to their formation and their development. And band, choir, orchestra, those opportunities are so priceless. And I guess my stump speech is I just want to say thank you to Douglas County that still says these programs are essential, they're critical. There is never going to be a metric that is adequate for measuring the impact that the performing arts have on our kids. We cannot forget that. We cannot forget that.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. You know, this guy, he literally does everything. I think it just speaks to the volume of what it means to serve kids. You know, I mean, you teach band, you teach orchestra, you teach guitar. You picked up an extra PE class because we needed it for electives. He hosts jazz band in the morning. He coaches cross country. He coaches track. I mean, I think it's just symbolic of what it means to be comprehensive and to serve, like you said, the arts and everything, and just to be such a model for kids. And I thank you, sir, for everything you do.
Okay, photo time.
Congratulations.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving us a reason each week to celebrate our amazing 68,000 students. This concludes the recognition portion of the agenda.
Very good. Let's Next on our agenda is the acceptance of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to accept the agenda. Second.
Motion's been made by Vogel and seconded by Holtzman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Chancho Shore.
Aye.
Graziano.
Aye.
Holtzman.
Aye.
Lemieux.
Aye.
Lung.
Aye.
Ray, aye, and Vogel.
Aye.
All right. Next on our agenda is public comment. The board values hearing diverse viewpoints from a broad spectrum of citizens throughout our community, specifically on items listed on tonight's agenda and on issues that impact the educational needs of our students. Two policies guide how public comment to the board is received: Board Policy KE, Public Complaints, and Board Policy BEDH, Public Participation at Board Meetings. Board Policy BEDH identifies that the board president is responsible for directing speakers to confine their remarks to the agenda item for which they have signed up to speak and to limit comments to 3 minutes. Policy BEDH also explains that since the board's responsibility is setting policy for the school district, members of the public should direct their comments to policy matters, and notes further that citizens are strongly encouraged to contact the teacher, building principal, or superintendent first with questions or concerns. Board Policy KE outlines the process for responding to grievances and complaints and explains that the board believes that complaints and grievances are best handled and resolved as close to the origin of concern as possible. Therefore, we encourage the proper channeling of concerns. For example, concerns that involve a child should begin with the teacher, then the building administrator, then the director of schools, assistant superintendent, and superintendent before appealing to the Board of Education. A similar process is desired if there's concerns regarding a specific board member. The first step is to contact and discuss the concern with the individual board member. If no resolution is met, then to contact myself or Vice President Vogel. If still not satisfactorily resolved, then it is appropriate to request addressing the entire board. The board would like for all discourse that occurs in this room to occur in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Everyone in this room plays an important part in modeling appropriate behavior and promoting a climate of mutual respect. To maintain this decorum of mutual respect, I would ask that speakers refrain from using individual names in an offensive manner, as this only distracts from the issue of concern. Each speaker will be allotted up to 3 minutes to address the board. Please know that this is our time to just listen, and therefore an immediate response is usually not given. However, we take your concerns seriously. Typically, we follow up with one or more of the following actions. We will reflect on your concern during the agenda item which was referenced, or direct your comments or questions to the superintendent or staff member for follow-up. It is possible that some comments will not result in a staff or response or further board action. Throughout the board meeting, the board follows Robert's Rules of Order to guide it in participating in an orderly and fairly conducted meeting. Under those rules, if a director calls for a point of order, all discussions and comments should stop so that a determination can be made as to whether a procedural rule or board policy has been violated. Therefore, if a point of order is made while public comments are made, a speaker should stop until otherwise directed to continue. Additionally, I may interrupt to provide a reminder to the speaker, which may be as simple as please turn your microphone on. I also want to take a moment just to acknowledge our law enforcement who are present here today and their purpose. They are here to ensure that this assembly of a people remains orderly. They do not pass judgment on whether what is spoken is appropriate or not. They are here to ensure so that our business can be conducted in an orderly environment. Finally, I want everyone to understand the limitations of the board's authority. The board only has authority over one employee, the superintendent, and this authority is only when we are a collective board. None of us have individual authority to direct the superintendent, nor do we have authority to direct any other personnel. Please also bear in mind that Colorado law affords teachers who are recommended for dismissal with a specific level of process. The board will make a personnel decision based on the outcome of that process. Therefore, until the process is complete and the matter is before the board for action, it is important that the board maintain its impartiality. So we ask if there are commenters here tonight who have signed up to address individual personnel matters, consider this when addressing the board this evening. As we proceed now with public comment from those who have signed up, I will call both the speaker and the next person to speak so that both can come forward. When you speak, please state the specific agenda item for which you signed up to address. Our first speaker tonight is Nancy Winsick, and following Nancy is Liz Wagner. So both of you would come to the front row, and we'll begin public comment. And actually, it looks like Nancy brought a friend.
Always with Amy.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. We at DC KID, who as part of the district's Dyslexia Task Force, wanted to take the opportunity to give you, the board and the community, an update on our work in regards to dyslexia. While we are in the beginning stages and there is much work to do, we have had some exciting momentum. We have had 4 meetings since you set this work in motion, and have 1 scheduled each month for the remainder of the year. First, we'd like to thank district leadership for their time and collaboration, and to particularly recognize the new Chief Academic Officer, Marlena Gross-Taylor, who joined our group on her 2nd day of employment and has since taken the helm of leading our work with undeniable alacrity and skill. Along with Nancy Engel's team, Marlena's team have set us upon a path that gives hope and excitement to our community. We are here tonight to celebrate that momentum and share a few exciting happenings. We have highlighted a few in our comment and detailed more in what we have handed out to you.
All right. So here are some of the highlights of what we've accomplished so far in our 4 meetings this year. We have a new dyslexia page, woohoo, on our Douglas County website that will continue to be revamped as a strategic plan is completed. In November, Orton Gillingham training, we offered that to 21 teachers, including special education teachers, and now we're planning a cohort with those teachers to continue supporting them in their learning. There's another Orton Gillingham training planned for March, and another this summer. Also a Wilson training this summer. So lots of wonderful trainings for our teachers. In December, staff members from Literacy and your professional development department with DC KID members attended the Colorado Department of Education Dyslexia Forum. So that's positive as well. We've had dyslexia simulations for over 60 plus READ Act coordinators from both neighborhood and charter schools, and the simulations that you participated in as well. So thank you. We also provided those simulations for 2 charter schools. This month, we're excited and very pleased to have been asked to provide a simulation for principals, in addition to helping in the collaborative process that we've had in creating this training for the principals. The meetings have been so productive. We feel that training our school leaders is very important and exciting next steps in bringing awareness and positive change to our schools. On March 3rd, we are planning a community dyslexia simulation event in which Nancy Ingalls will be joining us to provide a brief overview of the strategic and literacy framework plans for the district to our parent and the community members. So thank you so much on behalf of the Dyslexia Task Force that's meeting with the district leaders, parent volunteers, for your continued interest and support.
Very good. Thank you so much for the follow-up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Liz Wagner. After Liz Wagner is Stephanie Van Zanti.
Do I get extra time?
Yes, you do. We won't start your time
Awesome. All right, directors, good evening. My name is Liz Wagner, and you know that I hate standing here, so the fact that I am tells you how passionate I am about what I'm about to say. I'm a parent, community member, and taxpayer here in Douglas County. I have a multitude of concerns. Topic number 1, board policy KE. There is the spirit of the policy, which I believe is to encourage the community and parents to resolve concerns at the level at which they occur. Makes sense. I followed this policy myself many a time for my own children. Then there is the actual policy, which if strictly adhered to, would eliminate virtually all public comment from occurring. Respectfully, directors, I think you had some opportunities at the last meeting for improvement. In light of that, I would ask that you consider reviewing board policy KE to be very clear so as not to dissuade the community from being actively engaged with the school district. Topic number 2, Apex Charter School. You passed a resolution last spring that required Apex to have 220 verified intent to enrolls by December 20th of 2018. Whether or not Apex has met that requirement can neither be confirmed nor denied. It is now February. Neighborhood schools are planning their budgets. You promised us last year that neighborhood school budget planning would not be interrupted by the unknown of a charter school opening or not, and yet here we are. It is black and white. Either Apex had 220 verified enrollments as of 12/20/2018, or they did not. If they did, confirm it. If they did not, they should not open in 2019, period. They have been given exception after exception. Providing any further exceptions is not in the best interest of the Douglas County School District. Topic number 3, empty seats. We have over 12,000 of them in this district. Empty seats are expensive. At a recent board meeting, a slide was shown regarding spending MLO dollars for, quote, small schools. Is small schools the new buzzword for schools with empty seats? Because we only have one small school in this district, which is Cherry Valley. Historically, dollars from the general fund were designated as highly impacted funding for under-enrolled schools. To hear that MLO dollars are going to be used for under-enrolled schools is concerning to me, which leads me to topic number 4. Why hasn't a consultant been hired to study capacity and boundaries to address the 12,000 empty seats? I'm going to speak some truth to you tonight, and it isn't going to feel comfortable, but it needs to be said. The optics are that we are agile when it comes to spending money, and we are not agile when it comes to saving money. And this is a grave concern to me. I understand that closing schools and changing boundaries to save money is a hard conversation to have with our community and our staff. The bond in MLO was not an opportunity for us to kick that can down the road. It has been 9 months since you, as a Board of Education, passed a resolution to hire a consultant. A new life can be created, grown, and birthed in that amount of time. We are now 6 months late in what the long-range planning timeline was from last spring. It's unacceptable. And lastly, topic number 5, salary compression. The MLO did not move the needle for those impacted by salary compression. It didn't. We have educators who are making a couple thousand more than a new educator coming into Douglas County School District. This is so important. We will have educators leaving DCSD or their current positions this year as a result of it. Last year, my son had an amazing honors chemistry teacher at Rock Canyon. She's gone. She went to Denver Public Schools. They're about to strike because of salary. How can that be? That educator was to take the place of an amazing AP chemistry teacher. This is his last year. He's retiring. That principal tried to build a bench for succession planning, and we handcuffed his ability to do that. There is an amazing English teacher who is making only a couple thousand more than a newly hired colleague. My son had an amazing effective needs special educator at Crest Hill Middle School. You're going to lose her. You are. You're going to lose her. And you will hire someone else to backfill her position, making the same amount of money she makes today, and I am frustrated. No offense to anyone here who is not 80% student-facing in their position, but you are not why I supported the MLO. You are not why I was ever concerned. I was never concerned you would leave. You are not who I was concerned the HR department would struggle to recruit your replacement. It was our educators. For some of our students, not having them will literally change the trajectory of their lives. For students in effective needs, not having that educator means we will send more students on the school-to-prison pipeline, especially here in Douglas County, where the district's attorney office believes that students on the autism spectrum will become the next Sandy Hook shooter. A 5th grader, not my child. I need you to find a way to solve salary compression stat. The lives of students in this district literally depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Stephanie Vanzenti. After Stephanie Vanzenti is Stacy Shimada.
Good evening. I just came in from work, so traffic was a little bad, but I was live streaming it, and so I will have to say, yeah, thanks. I would have to say that Dr. A took away a few of my talking points for tonight, but I'm okay with that. So first of all, I would just like to say thank you for your time this evening. I would like to comment on board policy BEDH and KE, as Liz just did. After live streaming the January 22nd meeting that evening and reading the subsequent social media and local media reports, I was dismayed at the lack of civility shown to the board and all in attendance. for willfully violating the board policy, necessitating the removal of a speaker. From reading the discourse online, there appears to be a segment of our local constituents either confused or willfully ignoring these two policies in accordance to perceived First Amendment rights. BEDH specifically states it's the Board of Education policy not to hear in public session personal complaints against the district personnel. Policy KE, public complaints, states the board believes that complaints and grievances are best handled and resolved as close to their origin as possible, which you talked about earlier. Additionally, the board governance 1.8.3.3 states, except for participation in board deliberation about whether reasonable interpretation of board policy has been achieved by the superintendent, members will not express individual judgments or performance of employees. So these are all things that you guys refrain from. One speaker intentionally disregarded the policy and named someone employed by the district, while another was outraged that he had to follow policy, claiming that you were denying him his First Amendment rights. I say that ironically, as both were standing before you, exercising their First Amendment rights. One chose to follow the board's policy and one did not. One finished his comment and one did not. Each speaker chose the outcome based on the board's policy. The board and superintendent are not only bound to the board policy, but to state law. Colorado Revised Statute 2263-101 provides all non-probationary teachers with due process rights and limits the grounds for termination. 2263-202 states if the teacher or chief administrative officer intends to terminate his or her employment contract for the current academic year after the beginning of the academic year, the teacher or chief administrative officer shall give written notice to the board of his or her intent at least 30 days prior to the date that the teacher or chief administrative officer intends to stop performing the services required by the employment contract. The board and district appear to be following the law, whether that gives community members the immediate gratification they are demanding. Issuing a press release asking for an apology from members of this board and district is opening the district to legal liability, which under state law would permit an employee to file a grievance and receive up to $300,000 in damages based on the number of employees DCSD currently employs. However, I would like to make one suggestion for the board to consider. I'm almost done. As a parent of 2 DCSD graduates, if something like this occurs in the future, it would be helpful for the community that doesn't have a direct line of origin to the issue to have a way to address the board. Perhaps an email address that goes to the entire board, or a form online for someone to fill out that can then be reviewed by Tammy, or for the concerns to get to Dr. Tucker, so our district isn't once again turned into a national narrative. I appreciate you looking out for the best interests of all involved in this, whatever the outcome is rendered. I know that you've thoughtfully and lawfully applied due diligence to be fair arbitrators for all involved.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Vanzetti. Stacy Shimada. After Stacy is Gary Colley.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Stacy Shimada from the community group Douglas County Parents. We want to comment tonight on how thankful we are that you as a board saw the need for a bond and mill levy override and that the majority of our community agreed and voted yes on 5A and 5B. It shows the high level of trust people are willing to place in the district's hands, and we are excited to see our district moving in a positive direction. Kids are being put first, and we thank the 7 board directors for leading by example. Seeing the sign highlighting the upcoming FPOD edition of Castleview High School has made it real for all of us. As Director Ray says, promises made, promises kept. We are eager to see all of the improvements that will impact students, teachers, and our buildings. We would also like to give a warm welcome to Ms. Marlena Gross-Taylor. I don't think she's here tonight, though, our new academic officer. We have heard positive comments from various teachers and feel Ms. Gross-Taylor is going to be an asset to Dr. Tucker's cabinet and our district. We would be the first group to protest unnecessary additions to upper administration, but Dr. Tucker's cabinet was not complete upon his hiring, and we feel the chief academic officer position is essential to the success of our students and teachers. We're excited to see curriculum alignment between feeders and fresh eyes on our academic challenges in DCSD. We know there's a lot to do, and it's easy to become impatient. Please know that we appreciate you volunteering your time to work so hard to make DCSD a better place to learn and work. The positive change that has happened has not gone unnoticed by us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shimada. Gary Colley. After Gary Colley is Jim Helmer.
I came here with a kind of a different public comment, but it deals with the fact that your recommendation is for community input that could help the district meet the challenge of being the best school system possible. And, you know, for the number of years I've been doing this, it wasn't like that. And it didn't become like that until 2017. And anybody who would watch live stream of that work session you had tonight would have seen something remarkably different than anything that happened back to 2009. It wasn't there. And if they would look at other work sessions where you and the administration work together on how to do what's best for the kids, they would see something that hasn't been witnessed for almost 10 years. And this school board that's doing this. Now, I've been at public comment a lot. I recognize people that were speaking last board comment, kind of indicating that they had a chance to have good public comment prior to this board. The ironic thing is one of those people, the comments that were always made was dressed in a costume. If anybody remembers those days, there'd be a skit performed in front of the school board. Entertaining, but what's the purpose? You're getting people tonight stepping before you with strong, good public comment, with recommendations to move forward. My sense is we're going into election year, and you're going to be facing that kind of nonsense. And if it's deserved, then you should have it. If it's not deserved, you guys have the ability to stand up against it and stand strong no matter what. I know what I'm advocating for is for our parent and community members to unite again right now for the balance of this school year to understand that public comment following me tonight is going to be to disrupt the school board. Okay? Well, it's easy to step up here and say things that you can't truly validate. You're just letting your emotions guide what you say. I've witnessed what has happened in 9 years. I've witnessed where you guys tried to make good decisions when you were the minority to where you're making phenomenal decisions as a majority. Does that mean you won't make mistakes? Nope. But I'm sure if you make a mistake, you will own up to it and make the correction. So my encouragement to the community that would be watching on live stream is to step up now. When people have things that are derogatory to imply about our school board and our administration, we're too strong for that. Okay, but we can't wait until down the road to try to take a stand. I stand against anybody that will make public comment tonight denigrating the school board if they can't support the evidence they're talking about. I sign up for public comment. If I don't make it on time, I don't get to speak. If I sign up by 3 o'clock, I can address the board. If I violate policy and I start to mention somebody's name, I expect it to be reprimanded and asked to step back. And anybody who doesn't abide by that, I hope you ask to step back right when they do it. Good discipline sometimes comes because the consequences given are quick. So I appreciate you guys. Stay strong.
Thank you, Mr. Colley. Jim Helmer.
Good evening, directors. My name is Jim Helmer. I have a few questions regarding agenda item 15, the district's strategic plan. Strategic planning is important for any organization, and I'm encouraged that the district is looking at updating theirs. Setting goals and laying out a path towards them is important for any organization to be successful. The entry plan documented by Dr. Tucker, dated July 1st, 2018, states the following. Following completion of this entry plan, I will be collaborating with the Board of Education, our staff and educators and community to formulate a comprehensive 3-year strategic plan that will guide the district into the future. As a consultant for Epic Impact Education Group, it seems that the expertise for strategic planning resides with Dr. Tucker. Which leads me to the question, why is the district hiring an outside firm when Dr. Tucker has experience and expertise with strategic planning? I understand that in the past, a strategic plan has been done by the superintendent and the staff. What cost-benefit analysis has been done to determine that an outside consultant could bring more value to the process? How is the money spent on the consultant benefiting student and staff in the district? Since we are well beyond the 90-day entry plan, what is the timeline for completion of the strategic plan? Thank you for your consideration. I hope the Board of Education will answer these questions and share them with the community. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Helmer. So that brings a close to public comment. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda, including Gov Connection Spend Authority, as well as Apple Computer Spend Authority, a First Amendment to the Intergovernmental Agreement for Disaster Emergency Mutual Aid and Disaster Emergency Resource Assistance, personnel changes, and a notice of recommendation for teacher dismissal. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion has been made by Vogel, seconded by Holtzman. Any further conversation? Seeing none. Chancho Shore.
Aye.
Graziano.
Aye.
Holtzman.
Aye.
Lemieux.
Aye.
Lung.
Aye.
Ray. Aye. And Vogel.
Aye.
All right. That passes unanimously. Next on our agenda are the unofficial minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve. Second.
Approved by Graziano, seconded by Lung. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Chancho Shore.
Aye.
Graziano.
Aye.
Holtzman.
Aye.
Lemieux.
Aye.
Lung.
Aye.
Ray. Aye. And Vogel.
Aye.
Next on our agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Tucker.
Thank you, President Ray, directors, and our visitors. I have the pleasure of presenting 3 items. First is the selection of our strategic planning consultant, and I normally do not answer to any questions immediately regarding any speakers, but for the record, this Thomas Tucker does not work for Epic Impact, never have I. So, but I do invite our speaker when we begin to look for a broad community representation for our strategic planning to please touch base with me and would love your expertise. But again, Thomas Tucker never has worked for Epic Impact, but I have been part of several successful strategic planning. And we're going to create the very best strategic plan here in the Douglas County School District. Greenway Strategy Group, LLC provides strategy consulting, including strategic planning, business process improvement, program evaluation and design, governance support, and policy research. Their clients have included state education agencies, school districts, public, private, and charter schools, nonprofit organizations, universities, technical colleges, and community collaborations. GSG, Greenway Strategy Group, has extensive experience working with public education, including large, medium, and small districts. The plan will commence the end of this month, and the projected completion date is June 2019. This will be a plan that we need your input, community members. We need input from students. We need input from our board members, community members, staff, support staff, administrative, and we need our teaching staff as well as our business community. As I was talking with one of my colleagues earlier about this strategic planning process and the board end goals, and the board end goals, which many of you are familiar with. If you're not, please feel free tonight, if you need some extra time to do whatever, go to the board's website and look at the very 5 powerful board end statements. Those end statements will be the anchor for the strategic planning that will be conducted here in the district. As a matter of fact, tonight during the board's work session, we looked at 3 of the end statements, and each one of our cabinet members had an opportunity to weigh in on those end statements. And so I was talking with one of our colleagues tonight, Rich Payne, and he talked about this whole process, and he reminded me of this African proverb, and it's quite suitable for all of us. So if we want to go fast in doing the strategic planning process, we go alone. But if we want to go far, we go together. So we're asking the entire community from the ground up, let's go together and put forth a very powerful strategic plan that will set the direction for the Douglas County School District for the next 3 to 5 years. And again, when you are asked for your participation, and there's a call for participation. Please be a part of this great process. Next, I would like to say to the board, would ask Stacy Rader to come forward to talk a little bit about our communication. We heard communication earlier tonight as well. Talk a little bit about communication on the MLO and bond spend.
Very good. Good evening, Stacy Rader. Welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity to give you a quick update on our plans for communicating spending of MLO and bond dollars. As you know, Dr. Tucker, along with you, the board, are very interested in making sure we're as transparent as possible about how these dollars are spent. So these are some of the upcoming communications initiatives that we have planned. One of the most exciting pieces right now is actually getting signage up at our schools. So you may have seen the sign up at Castleview High School saying that that is where we have a future expansion coming as part of the bond. We will be putting the next batch of signs up at 24 schools this week, and those signs are letting the public know what work is going to be taking place at those schools from bond dollars. The signs say "Thank you, voters," and let them know what's coming at their schools. We are also working on providing our principals with letters that they can send home to their families, also reiterating what's going to be taking place at their schools and when, as we have those schedules. We're looking at sending those letters home right after spring break, and some of the schools will be getting work done as early as this summer. Then we'll get the signage up at the remainder of our schools in the next month or two, but the goal is to have those signs up at every single one of our schools. We're also working with our bond owners rep consultant. That ownership is not a great word. That consultant will be providing us with monthly updates about how bond dollars are being spent. They will also provide quarterly reports for our Mill Bond Oversight Committee, and that'll be very detailed by school as to what's happening. We plan to post those monthly reports on the funding page of our website, so dcsdk12.org/funding. And then we will be doing monthly superintendent updates to the staff and community. So we got the first one out in January. That one was really explaining how this works. The community doesn't really know when we get the bond money, when we have that in hand. So educating the community about what's happening and when that will take place. We'll continue to do those types of communications monthly. Dr. Tucker will also address MLO and bond updates in his Soups On videos at least once per month. And we'll continue to include updates in each edition of Purpose, which was formerly Newsline, our newsletter to the community, and Insights, formerly Think, newsletters to our staff. We will post all of these updates on our website. Many are there now, dcsdk12.org/funding. We want to collect and share testimonials from our school leaders, from our teachers, from families about what the MLO bond has meant to their schools. More of that will be coming in the next school year, particularly as we get counselors added to our schools and can tell those stories. Love to have before and after photos from our bond, again, coming down the pike, as well as updates that we've been pushing out there, continuing those on social media as well. We will do press releases as warranted. So we did one with the bond sale recently. We'll continue to do press releases as things arise. Dr. Tucker will be doing a quarterly superintendent column in Colorado Community Media, with the first coming in February. We're also talking to reporters, and we'll be working on getting reporters to follow some of our bond and MLO stories. So one idea would be having a news outlet follow progress with the bond dollars at a few schools like they did prior to the passage of this. As well as I still think that getting those counselors hired on at elementary schools in particularly would be a very powerful media story. And then the Mill Bond Oversight Committee, just to give you an update on that. We're in the process of forming that committee. Been in touch with our interview committee. They are going to meet next week on February 12th to determine their finalists that they would like to interview. We did receive 156 applications from people interested in serving on that committee. And then the plan right now is to interview the finalists on February 27th and then get those recommended names to the board at the first meeting in March so that we can finalize the process. I realize that's about one meeting further out than I was hoping, but that's where we're at. My goal is to get an email out to all of those applicants tomorrow with an update on what that timeline is looking like. And that's a quick and dirty overview. Any questions?
Board members, any questions for either Stacy Rader or Dr. Tucker regarding the strategic plan? Seeing none. I do have a quick question, Dr. Tucker. I think one of our commenters, and it kind of relates to the bond program. One of our commenters wondered about the bond. I'm sorry, the boundary and capacity consultant. It's my understanding that person has indeed been hired. And I see Rich Cosgrove is here as well. But can we make a quick comment about that as well?
Absolutely, it's a great plan that.
Dr. Tucker, I think your microphone's off. Very good.
I'm using my low voice.
Yeah. Use a louder one.
Yeah, louder voice. It's a great plan. In fact, Rich and I talked about the plan the other day, and then I took another view at it, and I'll let him speak at this moment. Rich.
Directors, thank you very much for the question. We have hired a consultant, Western Demographics, for the school capacity and boundary analysis. And on that selection team were members of our long-range planning committee and school leaders from multiple feeders. And it's a very qualified firm who's done literally hundreds of school capacity and boundary analyses across the country. And our first step per task one, in accordance with our request for proposal, is to stand up the steering group to obtain key factors that will be analyzed in order to receive a plan for community outreach and to inform the board, get guidance, and to make recommendations.
Very good. And Director Vogel just wanted to remind the public that spend was under the threshold, which is the reason why it didn't come to the board for approval, because our threshold is a $500,000 or greater that we need to approve certain spends. So
that's correct.
Very good. All right, any other questions? Also, Dr. Tucker, if I just follow up, one of the commenters asked about timelines around strategic plan. Do you have can you kind of give us a skeletal of what you are projecting?
The committee obviously has selected the consultant, and we will start within the next week or two just flooding our communication channels and getting the information out. Again, we need a robust group of participants across this district, across our community, and the projected timeline is June of 2019. So it's very aggressive, but very, very doable. And it's one more thing, but one more important thing that your staff, your administrative staff and cabinet will take on, but much, much needed in helping us to chart the course for the district for the next 3 to 5 years.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Tucker. Any other comments for your superintendent's report?
My last comment, I will end in 30 seconds with how I started. Thank you, Board of Directors. Thank you, community, for helping our great educators here in this district instill a love and passion for music and the arts. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Next on our agenda is to respond to the staff analysis that was done regarding school start times. And if I may, board directors, I think I'm going to try to capture what I think our walkaways were. And then I would ask if I've missed anything. And then I would like us to engage in discussion in terms of what are our next steps regarding that. But we certainly had a great analysis done by our staff regarding the impact of school start times. And the walkaways were, one is that the research indicates that there is indeed a direct correlation of adequate sleep to students' mental wellness and their cognitive development. I think that was well done, well said, and very clear. I think the other thing that we noted is that the most significant impacts would be felt with after-school activities and after-school daycare. We heard the most concerns from those two programs. The most significant financial impacts include the need to purchase more buses, hire more bus drivers, lighting fields to allow for activities, and cost to parents that would need to pay for additional daycare services. The other walkaway is that the survey of almost 21,000 respondents indicated a slight majority of support for changing school start times, which is about 55%. We did see from students, about 65% of our students indicated that the current times are beneficial in allowing them to participate in extracurriculars. We do know that other districts have overcome obstacles to change school start times, and we also know that the staff has recommended at this time no change for start times at all schools. So those really were my 6 takeaways as I try to sum up their analysis. Did I miss anything that you think was also a critical point that you heard? Director Lemieux?
So I think it's really important to point out as well, when we asked the community about the start change, changing the start times, we didn't have a number of how much that would cost the district. And I believe that number is fairly significant if they had known. So I'm wondering if we went back and just did a small sample and said, you know, obviously a statistically sound sample of folks out in the community, if you want this, here is everything that we know about it, and here's what it's going to cost, if that same slight majority would be the same. And again, not discounting the absolute data that we have on the importance of sleep. But that is a piece of this consideration. So I think we need to, if we're going to move forward with this, we would need to let the community know how much it's going to cost and get a little more feedback on that personally. And then may I mention one other thing?
Sure.
The only other thing that I remembered and I recall is the busing situation. It takes up to 18 months to get a bus. And so if we're going to keep talking and thinking about this, what are we going to do and how quickly we need to give our staff a timeline on a decision. So I would like some feedback from staff. How quickly do they need to have a final decision for us? Because I don't want to just drag this out too long that we put our staff in a bind.
Very good. Thank you, Director Lemieux. And Director Lemieux, you're doing a nice transition for us into kind of what are some thoughts that we have in terms of moving forward. Director Lemieux has made a compelling argument that maybe it needs to go back out to our community to help them understand that there's a $15 million cost in making these changes, and would that impact your thoughts about changing start times? And I think also just the respect for staff in terms of do we have the manpower and do we have the time and how much time do they need to be able to do anything effectively. So what other afterthoughts, directors, did you have? Other comments? Director Holtzman?
So I agree with what you said, both of you. I would also probably advocate that not only do we go back to the community with the cost, but also do some more education efforts in regards to what the research really says. I know we did some of that, but I know that our actual in-person groups were pretty small. And then I think at the last meeting, and then as a follow-up to the meeting, there were a few other questions that honestly the staff haven't had a chance to answer yet in regards to more details about how some of those costs were calculated, especially in regards to the base program. And then learning maybe just a little bit more about the lighting and if it was possible to be neutral with buses, just a few more questions. And then finally, really, I know that the reason anyone would want to make this change is to improve our academic achievement and our mental wellness of our students. And we know that that is a positive impact. But if we're not able to do it, if it's just not practical, and right now that's what our staff is telling us, I'm interested in learning about some alternatives. And we already do a lot of those in our schools. And so it's kind of a never-ending list of how can we improve mental wellness and academic achievement. But, for instance, there's a school, BOCE's RIMSL, has implemented movement in their classrooms on a daily basis. And research has shown that improves mental wellness. And they have actually already collected data to show that their behavioral incidents are down and their attendance is up. And so there may be other things that are more cost effective that we haven't looked at yet that we could consider. So I would be interested in that, but definitely don't want to put more on the staff and make it a timeline that isn't reasonable. So,
Director Long and then Director Vogel.
Well, my underlying concern is the welfare of the student. They always come in number one in my book. Cost, of course, is something that we need to look at. So I'm trying to see is the cost that was being shown to us in the last board meeting. Can we, as Dr. Vogel said in the last meeting, can we get some creative solutions and lower the cost? And I'm looking at PSD in the Lofton, Colorado, who just passed the change of daylight saving. They have around over 30,000 students, which is probably half of what we have. The estimate cost of implement that in year one is around $685,000. So how come our estimated cost is so much higher compared with a district that is half of our size, but looks like the cost that we have is several times more than the estimated cost. And I know that every single school district is different, okay? But this is the fourth school district that has moved to this model. So I think, although, you know, it's not apple to apple comparison, but I think there's a lesson that we can learn from the others. So I would love to have a staff. I know that they did tremendous work of looking at this, but I just would love them to, again, look at the school district and see how they could trim down the cost to make it more cost effective. Or maybe at the end of the day we can, but it's worthwhile, I think, to explore the options.
Very good. Thank you, Director Long. Director Vogel?
So just to expand on that a little bit of what I was talking about, that would be really good if we got some data from staff and from students to see if they would be interested in doing this with a flexible schedule. And basically what I'm thinking is that you'd keep the transportation the same, the start times the exact same, so students that do after-school activities can still go in at the normal time, and the busing goes during that time. But then there would be another subset of students and staff that would start like one period later in the day, and it would coincide with that time, and then go one period later in the day, but no transportation for that. That would be, you know, incumbent upon the families to do that. And then would there be an excessive cost if the school day in a high school actually went for an extra period longer, but then it would allow people to be able to opt into the system? Students could opt in if they want to do the later time, and then it wouldn't have the impact on elementaries and the base after-school care, before and after school care. And then the only thing is that it wouldn't, I mean, middle schools would have to still stay the same. It really would only be high schools, I think, that could have that flexibility. But maybe not, I don't know. I think it would have to be looked at. But I think we'd have to have our building leaders survey their school and kind of get an idea. Do you have enough students that would opt into it? And do you have enough staff that would opt into that too? So that's what I would advocate for.
Dr. Lemieux?
Just reflecting on a couple of comments, I would say some things that they already did research. I imagine our busing issues are very different from a school district that's not 850 square miles, and adding 33 buses, I imagine, is a huge piece of that. And those districts may also already have lighting. Again, we hadn't passed a bond since 2006, I believe, so 12 years. So they may have already had some of those things that we will have to put in to implement this. I question whether spending $15 million, that's just upfront money. There's also ongoing millions in costs of ongoing upkeep in that system. Could that money be better served for mental health systems to put in place? Aside from that. And then kind of thinking along the same lines of Director Vogel, we have a 5 of 7 day already. Can we, and again, this is really a huge issue with our schools, but if they have kids that really would benefit from this, how can we say you don't start your day until second period anyway? And your last class is that 7th period. So they wouldn't have a first period in the first place. And we actually don't even have to change anything, but we just have to change that mindset that might be a need for students. And if we have because not all students wanted the time change. And we got that very clear message. A lot of kids want to go early so they can work in the base program afterwards, or go early so they can do their activities after school and get done with their day. But for those kids who it is a mental health issue, that we already have the ability to do that within the 5 of 7 period. So I'm not sure. It just needs to be a conversation more than any actual additional hour on the day, because I could see that causing a lot of scheduling issues.
Director Vogel.
Yeah, definitely would be a lot of scheduling issues, but I think if we did that, what you're talking about, we'd get into the same situation we had in the past with not getting enough hours. But if you just shift, an hour or one period later, then those people, because not everybody's going to have 5 of 7. I mean, not every student in high school is going to have 2 off periods. So, you have probably the vast majority of students are taking a full schedule of classes and need to be there for all 7 periods.
So then it gets to, we need them to research and give us, we don't want to micromanage this, but it's just something we would want looked into. Got it.
So Allison down there, just curious, what do you think about that? Having more of a flex schedule where you could come to school later if you choose because you need more sleep. What's your thoughts about that as a student? Yep. Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot. Thank you.
I think that in terms of mental health, I think it is extremely important to look into starting later. But just me personally, I know that even if I had the option to, I wouldn't take it because just with my schedule, the classes that I'm taking at a certain time, it does not work for my classes to be shifted at all. So I think if you took a whole group of kids and then expected to be able to rearrange classes, even just with the normal class set, I think that'd be a difficult task. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think it would be an obstacle as well. Just because I know with counseling at my school, it's tough to get your classes switched around. And I think to throw in a whole nother group of kids that are having whole nother schedules would be something to overcome. And then also just in terms of starting later, I know one of the clubs that I'm in, we strictly have meetings after school. That's the only time that we can meet. And also I know that if you started schools later, I know sports would just start earlier because I know a lot of sports where if school starts at 8, then they're in the weight room at 6:30. So if you started school at 9, then they'd be in the weight room at 7.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you for your thoughts. Any other comments? Director Graziano.
First off, the work that was presented to us was fantastic. I mean, it was really quite impressive what was pulled together. I guess, my thoughts on this really just go to being able to pull something like this all together, given just several of the things that were discussed tonight that are on everyone's plate. For one, the bond money being spent, and doing that well. It's a huge commitment, 12 years since that's happened, and now it's a huge responsibility to be able to deliver on that successfully. The next thing, Dr. Tucker and team delivering on a strategic plan. So another huge effort that we're undergoing that is going to take a great amount of effort. And then the last thing that was kind of mentioned in passing, by the way, is, this boundary planning study. So all of these things, to me, combined, then we're asking now all of a sudden the staff to pivot to be able to deliver a very complex process, and then it's not even talking about the costs that we've cited. So I just think there's just so many things that are begging this to be looked at further, but I just think to, out of the gate here from what's been presented, I'd be curious what Director Lemieux said, if people had known the cost, if that would have been the same results. I would probably say not likely. So, I'm hesitant for it. I see that there's the benefits for the student. I just think from a district-wide systems approach, executing on that, given the other things we have on our plate, just seems way too much.
Thank you. Director Long?
Well, I just want to clarify a while ago when I say, PSD, in the Lofton, Colorado, they passed the time changes in November 2018. I forgot to mention that they are double the size of DCSD in terms of, square meters. they're over 1,800 square meters, while DCST is only 869. However, they can limit the cost to $685,000 a year. So all I'm saying is that you know, trying to look at that more, because research after research shows that this truly benefit our student. To save one student having mental issues or making them, much more productive, there's a cost associated with that, but it's up to us to determine whether that cost is outweighed saving and getting more kids to be more productive. So that's tough decisions to make. I don't have an answer. I don't know how much that saving one kid or making one kid better, how much should it worth. I think, as the other officer said, that probably we should do a survey. But again, before that, I would nail down on the cause and see whether that is truly the cause that we're looking at by looking at the other school district.
Dr. Chandrashore?
While I don't want to perseverate or overanalyze the things we've already discussed or repeat them again, I would love to call, I guess, for more public information. And if there's a cry from our public that this is incredibly important, then we need to hear that from our public through our email or through public comment, where we hear lots of other needs rise to us. So I guess I'm saying if this is a need, we should hear more about it as a need prior to putting more staff time into analyzing or perseverating in the things we already know.
Thank you, Director Chandrashore. Director Holtzman?
Actually, she basically kind of covered it, so okay. Nothing right now.
Well, it appears to me, directors, we really have 4 options in terms of emotion or how we want to move forward. There's been a lot of advocacy to request that we continue exploring this, whether that's to collect more data from our public, whether it's to get education out to the public, to push out what we've found so they understand some of the cost issues, more education efforts around the research. It sounds like there's also the desire maybe to explore flexibility with scheduling, and I think we can actually provide probably a list of things that we would highlight should we move to have this to be further explored. So that's one option, is just to further explore this notion of changing school times. The other motion I heard certainly is to say, let's make sure this research is considered when we start working on our mental health work, our mental health program, making sure that that is included in terms of how that comprehensive mental health program should look like. Third option is to approve the staff's recommendation for not changing. I think Director Graziano certainly made an appeal for that in terms of they've got so much on their plate. Why are we putting more if we don't necessarily have all the data we need to say this is absolutely the direction we should go? So I think he made that. And then the other option we have is to change start times. It's beginning in the year 2020 and change the start times to the high school starting later and the elementary starting earlier. That's also an option as well. So I'm going to just ask that you advocate now for one of those options and that we get to a motion. Director Vogel?
Can I get to a motion right now?
Yes, you may.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation not to change the start times and focus on mental health.
Motion's been made to accept staff's recommendation and to continue to focus on mental health with the data that we've learned. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Graziano. Further discussion? Director Holtzman?
So I totally understand the recommendation because you've made a good point. We are asking every staff member, every parent, every community member to do a lot right now. We're doing a lot. So I think that proverb about going fast and you go alone kind of applies to this situation too. I think we just want to do the best for our kids, and that's where I'm coming from. I just know that ultimately, if we could wave a magic wand, this would be best for our kids to allow them to have the later start time. But, I just don't think that we're at that place in the district right now. That's not something we ask our community for when we went out for a bond. We didn't say, you know, we've heard from you, and we're going to need more buses, and we're going to need lighting. But I would like to see this continue to be thought about in terms of strategic planning and in terms of mental health and in terms of creative financial solutions. You know, I know one of the data points I asked for that no one has, you know, it just has been too quick a turnaround for this, but was, you know, how many hours are we really talking about that we need lights? I mean, do we really have to have lights, or is there a creative solution to get around that? And so if I just could know that we're continuing to recognize that the research is out there and that we're incorporating it into our future plans, I would appreciate that.
So it sounds like, Director Holtzman, you're in favor of the motion, but with some qualifying factors of just not wanting just to drop this, that we really use the data we've gained and the knowledge we now have about how important it is for our students to have an adequate amount of sleep, that shows up again. I think you're just really wanting to make sure that we don't just stop and drop. Other comments? Director Lung?
I do not think we should drop it. Research showed that over and over again that late start time is good for the the student, especially the teenager. And although I'm not favor to switch it right away, I do think that we owe it to the community to study it further and try to see whether we can find a flexible solutions to minimize the cost, or do another survey by asking them, okay, if this is the cost that associated with it, what do you think? By just absurdly drop it like this, I think we do not perform all the due diligence that we could have. And community input is important, and community give us the input. However, some of those input, the sample size is less than ideal. I think I treasure highly of what the staff does, and a lot of community members have spent time on this. I do understand that will be further texting, for them. However, this is a very important mental health issues. I felt deeply about that. I have a teenager, and I saw her and waking up every day. So, I live that every day. So I am passionate about this, and every student's mental health, count. Again, unfortunately, we must assign a dollar amount to do the right thing, but I think that we owe it to the community to ask them more questions before we decided to pull the plug.
So, Director Lung, what I'm hearing is that the motion on the table right now for you is not strong enough in terms of feeling like that we need to explore and continue to need to gather input from our community. Other discussion, other thoughts, Director Lemieux?
I want to be really careful about saying it's all about the money. Not one child wouldn't be worth $15 million to save. That to put that kind of stress on us as a deciding body and to our staff who made a recommendation, I think that's unfair, and I think it's a little bit extreme. They have worked really hard to get us the facts, and we have to base our decisions on what's best for this system. We don't get to base it on one thing here and one thing here there. I think if we don't spend $15 million plus ongoing on this right now, that gives us $15 million to spend on programming for kids, for mental health on kids, for working on some of these really important priorities that we have. So I just want to be really, really careful that we don't put ourselves under so much. I just don't think that was a very fair thing to say, because I don't think I would ever make a decision not to spend money because I don't care about the mental health or safety, wellness, or future of our children. We are all passionate about the mental health of our kids. We have all been impacted, and me directly impacted, by suicide, which is one of those mental health things that would be possibly solved through changing the start times. So I want to be really careful with that, because then we're going to get people throwing out there they don't care about our kids because they don't want to spend the $15 million on this. We've got to be careful with our money. We have a finite amount, and I am incredibly impressed with what the staff is doing with what we've been given. I am very thankful to our community that we are going to be able to put counselors in every single school. Would we want to give teachers double raise? Of course we would. The fact is we had $40 million, and we made a conscious decision to put a huge chunk of that into counseling, and that we did that for a reason. So I'm passionate about that. But if I make this decision not to move on with start times, I don't want to be attacked because I don't care about kids. I do.
Thank you, Director Lemieux, and I think it just reinforces Director Vogel's quantifier that not only the motion is to accept staff's recommendation, but also to explore vigorously the mental health implications with sleep and with moving forward. Director Vogel?
Really quickly, along the lines of money, and I understand the desire to get more input from the community, but we did spend money to do the survey to initially look at this. And I really don't want to see us spending more money to go out and do another survey to see if things would change if people knew the cost. And so that's part of what my decision is. I know it's important to have that input from the community, but I don't want to spend more money on it.
So again, I'll just repeat this. The motion on the table is that we accept staff's recommendation for not changing start times at all schools, along with making sure that this research and data is being used to help define mental health programming for students. Other comments before we take a vote? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Chancho Shore.
Aye.
Graziano.
Aye.
Holtzman.
Aye.
Lemieux.
Aye.
Lung.
No.
Ray, aye, and Vogel.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes 6-1. All right, next on our agenda is a policy revision, Board Policy JICH, Student Involvement Regarding Drugs and Alcohol. This is the second reading, and so this would be actually a motion to approve the policy as revised. Mrs. Klimisch, any thoughts you want to make regarding the second reading?
I have no additional comments. As Mr. Knight explained at our last meeting, this revision is made so that this policy can be consistently applied with prior recently revised policies, generally to our expulsion and suspension procedures.
Ms. Klimisch, I just want to clarify too, because I think there's some impressions out there that we're getting soft in terms of what we tolerate in terms of student behavior. And certainly as I read this policy, I still see that expulsion is still an option for a principal or a building leader to choose should there be that kind of behavior that requires that. But I think what you're addressing is that this aligns us with the state that says that the only mandatory expulsion is when weapons are brought in school, and we want our policy to align to state statute, but we also want to be real clear that this does not provide leniency in terms of encouraging students that now it's okay to bring drugs to school. Am I summarizing that correctly?
That is correct. The only change to this policy is that it excludes the mandatory expulsion requirement for certain kinds of behaviors that may technically fall into the definition of violating this policy or portions of the policy, but may not otherwise substantiate the need for the severe punishment of expulsion. It leaves it to the discretion of the principals and the administration to bring those recommendations forward based upon the severity of the conduct in violation of this policy.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments or discussion regarding this policy? Director Chancho Shore?
I want to iterate that because there are so many policies and so many things that we're talking about right now, I am recommending, and I don't know if it's the right word, that when this specific policy around how kids are expelled or suspended, if this is approved, it is also extremely important that because principals are making that decision, that there is training that is specifically related to the policy as it is approved and when it is approved, so that it's an ongoing kind of opportunity for conversation in our administrative work.
You know, it is customary for policies like this to also have an R, a regulatory policy that does not only give more definition to how a principal proceeds, but I think Director Chancho-Shore's point is well taken to help make sure there's consistency amongst our leaders. And I know Mr. Knight's not here, Mary or Dr. Tucker, but I would assume that as we continue our project to update all our policies, that we would also see a regulatory policy that might accompany this that gives more specifics of what you're questioning. Ms. Klimisch, any thoughts?
And I appreciate your comment, Director Chancho-Shore, because we certainly have discussed and are working with our EDOS, with Mr. Knight, our administrative team, and including those classified staff that are involved in implementation of disciplinary procedures to ensure that, number one, the principals have the support they need to make educated and well-informed decisions, and two, that our classified staff understand the procedural requirements with respect to implementing our policies consistently, and to afford those who are participating in the process the information they need, so it is a fair proceeding in terms of a very serious form of discipline like a suspension, or the most serious form, which would be expulsion. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adopt this policy as revised.
I make a motion to adopt the policy as revised.
Motion's been made by Holtzman, seconded by?
Second.
By Vogel. Any further discussion? Director Lemieux.
I probably should have asked this earlier. What feedback did we get from our school principals that will have to be the ones implementing this?
Ms. Klimisch?
So I believe that and Mr. Knight would be a better person to reflect this, but my understanding is that we'd actually had gotten input from our principals asking us to look at this policy to make sure it was aligned with our prior revisions.
As a practice, I've asked Mr. Knight to take all policies to principal cabinet, which is a representation of our elementary, middle, and high school principals for input.
Very good, thank you. Director Lemieux.
As a follow-up, Dr. Tucker, do you recall any pushback or concern with taking out the specifically expulsions shall be mandatory?
In my conversations with Mr. Knight, I don't recall, but the central message is that you're moving from mandatory expulsions to may. It doesn't rule out, and we're not going soft. If you break the rules, we're going to expel you with compassion if it warrants it.
Very good. Other questions, Director Vogel?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment to make. I think that that this is a really important thing, and I think it opens the door for students that need help, rather than you're automatically going to get kicked out of school if you're either in possession or you're under the influence, and it opens the door that they can actually get help without the threat of being expelled.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think we certainly heard a public commenter passionately talk about the pipeline to prison that occurs in some of our other school situations, and I agree, Director Vogel, that this really is giving us a time to educate and rehabilitate as opposed to just going for a consequence and a punishment. So, well said. Director Chancho-Shore?
So am I understanding that this policy will have a superintendent's regulation, a resolution connected?
We certainly can do that. I can also tell you that as we go through the revamping work with CASB of revising our policies, this policy is also going to be looked at again. Mr. Knight and I have discussed that. We are presently on the agenda with our principals cabinet coming up in a couple of weeks on another policy that will soon be coming before you. So we really are addressing the means by which to bring our administrative team together to help inform them and develop processes so that they can, as effectively as possible, as informed as possible, implement these policies consistently.
And Director Chandrashore, I would just add that we have been using CASB as a resource to develop model policies, and they do have a JICH-R, which gets more specific in terms of the regulatory. So I would anticipate that we would see that with our overall project. So the answer is, as we're looking through the project, that we will definitely hope that will be the case. We will expect that to be the case. Director Chandrashore would like us to make sure we have a JICHR. All right, we got a motion and a second on the table to accept this policy as revised. Any further discussion? All right, seeing John Choshore.
Aye.
Graziano.
Aye.
Holtzman.
Aye.
Lemieux.
Aye.
Lung.
Aye.
Ray, aye, and Vogel.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Moving on to Board of Education reports. I know. I know. No, that's right. 7:35. We're on time. So, first of all, President report, I would just say, Board Directors, just a reminder that agenda planning is tomorrow at 11 o'clock here. So I know some of us are at the Capitol tomorrow. I know Director Holtzman will talk about that, but we will get here as soon as we can at 11 o'clock and do agenda planning. And then the overhaul launch that Ms. Clemish and myself, we've been talking about, again, has been rescheduled, and we hoped it will go forward on February 26th at 2 o'clock p.m. And again, that's a publicly noticed meeting, and so all are welcome to attend to understand how that launch will work. And then my final thoughts, I do want the boards, sometime for the board to discuss and have conversation about our two existing policies for public comment. Policy KE and policy BEDH. And I think we can certainly look at it from, again, some other CASB model policies to see where ours fits. But I will tell you, as the presiding officer of these meetings, it's been very difficult to have some pretty strong words in these policies that I feel like at times feels too restrictive, or feels like that if I'm not consistent with calling things out, that I feel like I'm not upholding board policy like I should. So I'm just going to leave it at that and just ask for you to continue to look at those two policies. I know legal will also vet it more for us as well and give us more feedback about that. But bottom line is, we want public to be able to comment. We want to hear their concerns. I think our emphasis will always be in an environment of respect and appropriate decorum, but I also want to make sure that we're not getting so rigid. I think, again, another public commenter mentioned concern that maybe we're causing some people or dissuading some people from making public comment if we make these guidelines too rigid and too strict. So I'm just going to put that out there for thoughts later, and as we work through our policy revisions, it might be one that definitely needs some attention. That's all I have. Director Vogel?
I would also add social media policy to that as well.
Thank you.
To look at.
Yeah.
The DAC Winter Forum is on Tuesday night. You guys all have gotten an invitation. I know some are not available to come. It's going to start 5:15 with the Board of Education and the superintendent doing an informal talk with the chairs of our board committees, and it just gives people the opportunity to come and talk to us, ask questions, anything that comes up. And then the youth initiative, they're working on, they have right now the Outstanding Youth Awards are open, and students can be nominated for that. And I believe that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Vogel. Other reports from the board regarding, yes, Director Holtzman.
So I'll start with CASB, and you are correct that there's a CASB day at the Capitol tomorrow, but that's not one of the 2 days that Douglas County School District chose to participate in.
Oh, thank you.
Although it's open and anyone can go.
So I shouldn't show up tomorrow.
You shouldn't show up
Okay,
tomorrow.
thank you.
The next one that Douglas County School District is participating in is next week, February 13th. We already had our one for students. This one is for parents and community, and we have I think around 10 people signed up right now. We have 20 spots available, but looking forward to that. And just to kind of clarify too, the purpose of these days really for Douglas County and Casby is to build relationships with our other elected officials at the state level. So we'll have opportunities to speak with some of them. Hopefully, I know that it's looking like that's going to end up being a pretty busy day for them. So I'm not sure, but I'll be checking in with them. And just for our folks to get used to, for people who haven't been to the Capitol, to take a tour and to learn the ins and outs of how to talk to your elected officials. So, and then the Partnership of Douglas County Governments, the next meeting's March 20th. And LRPC, Mr. Cosgrove already clarified that a couple of our members participated in the interview process for the capacity and boundary consultant, and since that process has concluded, that they've hired that person, and they'll be giving us regular updates both at LRPC and as requested by the board. And that's, I think, the big things with LRPC.
Thank you, Director Holtzman. Other reports, Director Lung?
So a couple of weeks ago, President Ray asked me to look into this parent engagement policy. And I want to thank you, Stacy. She did a wonderful job of putting it together, and I did have a meeting with her. And I'm going to make a report on what, I just want to summarize this, and you have an attachment in the board policy. I mean, in the board agenda. You can, if you want to go into details, you can read that. So basically, Stacy, if I did not interpret it correctly, please let me know. Okay. So basically, we want to create something that meet the state law in cooperative with parents, family, and community engagement. So in alignment with the board approved policy, and we are going to have something called DCST leaderships form in groups that is being formed. And the goal of this is trying to, it's similar to an academy kind of things, that we want to train a group of parents and a community leader so they could have a better understanding of the operations of our district, our missions, and then our priority. And currently the visions is going to have around 30 members. And so this is going to be several months programs. It will run from September to May. And then every month is going to have specific topics that I'm not going to go into details. You can read that. So we believe that with these programs, we will get parents or community member have a deeper understanding to see how we operate, and it's going to be a very good training farms for our community. So if in case they want to step up to serve in a board committee or SAC or even run for board member, so it gives them a very good understanding of how the district operate. And I think it's essential and important programs to educate our citizen on how the board or the administrations and the school district operate. After all, we are the third largest school district in Colorado. We have a complex financial structure. We are close to $700 million of revenues, 8,100 employees, and over 60,000 students. And with 91 schools, in any measure, it's a complex enterprise that if anybody wants to step in and help out, a good foundations, a good training is going to be good. So every year it's going to be 30, and we can increase the number or decrease the number, but we'll envision that as the year goes by, we're going to have some sort of groups of people that where they can take over if we lead the two, and I think it's a good programs. Stacy, did I forget anything?
Good answer, Stacy. All right, very good. Thank you, Director Lung, for that report and that summary.
So, you have any questions about this? I think Stacy is ready and eager to move this forward. And if no one have any particular concern with that, I trust Dr. Tucker and Stacy's leaderships in that.
Very good. And Director Lung, you are our engagement liaison, so we also trust you to oversight and be our channel for understanding. So we appreciate that. Director Vogel?
Question about that. I know you said something about membership and that different committee members will be involved, but is there another capacity or role that the DAC will take in this at all? Because I know that that's part of what their charge is as well. So is there a role that they'll play that they need to know about?
Stacy, you want to answer that?
So real quickly, it is a leadership cohort, and I'm certainly open to how the DAC wants to be involved with that. Initially, if we were to get more than the 30 people applying, we would need a selection process, and I see members of the board and the board subcommittees being part of that selection process.
Very good. Any other questions or comments about board reports? Director Graziano, board report? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is for the FOC. So just to give you an update, there is an FOC meeting this Thursday here. So just like this meeting, if you're looking to attend, it's not streamed, so come on down. Just some of the things that'll be on the agenda. So there'll be an update on the investment plan talk about how the last year's investments of the bond proceeds and talk about how they're going to be spent. Talk about bond proceeds communication mechanisms, so in that sense, and then also we'll be talking about the second quarter financial report and also the bond transaction results and a 2019-2020 budget timeline. So that's on Thursday. We'll also have actually another topic being covered will be that Stacy talked about earlier, be on the mail and bond oversight ad hoc committee. So we'll give an update on that to the FOC as well.
Very good. Thank you, Director Graziano. Director Lemieux?
And just to add on to that, one of the things the FOC really strongly wanted to help out with was communication, especially about bond sales, because they feel like the community might be confused on that. So, Stacy, if you could, that information that you just told us about your incredible list of ways we're communicating out, if you could please send that to Director Graziano and I so we can share that Thursday night, I would certainly appreciate that. And I have been really trying to push out dcsdk12.org/funding. There is so much great information on there, and for people to help understand everything from staff compensation to how much we sold the bonds for. And I think we're being unbelievably transparent, and I would just encourage everybody to literally just go look at that site, push on that plus button, click on any of those questions, and there's a whole bunch of information. So I just wanted to commend the communication department on that, and however we can help share out that information, that is a phenomenal resource for anybody who has questions. So one other thing, people keep asking me what's certified, what's classified. I don't know if we have a dictionary page on there or a terms FAQ. What does this mean? I don't know what my brain is apparently thinks it's 11 o'clock because we're at this point. So glossary, yay, I thought of it. Okay, so a glossary, if we could just throw out, maybe, I'm just don't listen to me or listen to me, I don't know.
All right. Any other board reports? All right. Quick meeting evaluation. Just would ask quickly if there's any thoughts you have about this meeting, any implications that you think we should carry over to future meetings, and any topics that you heard. So I see Chancho Shore and Director Vogel. Go ahead, Chancho Shore.
I love to carry over the amount of time from 5 until 8 that this
So
meeting.
noted. So we finally have a reasonable agenda is what you're saying. Thank you. You got it. Director Vogel?
She said it.
All right, all right. We'll continue to make that our goal. So hopefully that'll be a standard we've set from here on out. All right, any other meeting evaluations or comments about topics for future?
I would just say I enjoyed the beginning session with the cabinet. I think that sometimes sit up here in a vacuum and it's just to sit in the same table with everybody and just hear them. It was that was the high point of the night. That was good.
Would agree. For those of you that don't know, we started a 5 o'clock work session where we just had a very informal conversation with our cabinet members, and we walked away in awe of the many things that they are focused on to really make this the best system possible for kids. So it was delightful to have that time. Any other thoughts? Meeting evaluation? All right. We do, Board of Directors, have legal issues in which we need to hold conference with the board's legal counsel to receive legal advice on specific legal questions pursuant to CRS 246402-4B. Specifically, our topic is legal advice. I would ask for a motion that not only adjourns this meeting, but also incorporates a short break and then to resume into executive session, should that be the desire of the board.
Move to adjourn the regular board meeting, have a break, and convene into executive session.
Second.
Motion's been made by Vogel and seconded by Lemieux. Any further discussion? I would just also point out that our executive session will include consultation with Superintendent Tucker, General Legal Counsel Mary Klimisch, and also telephonically Kristen Edgar from Kaplan and Ernest. I believe that's all our guests for tonight. Dr. Tucker, I think, is that Mary, Mrs. Klimisch, is that your understanding? Okay, all right, very good. Sorry. So motion's been made and seconded. No further discussion. Let's go ahead and vote. Chancho Shore.
Spoke too soon. Aye.
Graziano.
Aye.
Holtzman.
Aye.
Lemieux.
Aye.
Lung.
Aye.
Ray. Aye. And Vogel.
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned.